Welcome to the Wing Life Podcast, where we talk about wing foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy this great sport. All right, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Did you ever think that you would be like flying through the air on this weird magic carpet thing, holding on to like this little pool toy, not knowing if it's going to blow up or not?
I heard someone the other day describe it as trying to balance on a bobbing cork that is on a pogo stick while you're holding a sheet in the wind. And I thought that was hilarious because no, when I first saw winging, I can't even believe that we have a new wind sport, to be honest. I still am grappling with that in my mind. But when I first saw winging, I was like, this is so stupid. What is this? And obviously now I'm completely addicted and it's so much fun, but no, could not have seen this coming.
Yeah, the first time I took it out, I was on a lake on Vancouver Island. My brother's like, I'm not even touching that. Like I'm kiting. I don't know what that thing is, and I'm not going near it, but I think all of us have fallen in love with the different aspects of what it's brought to our lives. But kind of completely took us actually by surprise as well. But for a lot of our guests at home who might not know you, can we go a little bit into the history of who you are and kind of how you found water sports?
Hmm. My name is Sensi Graves. I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm a professional kiteboarder and now wing foiler as
There
well.
we go.
I'm the founder of a sustainable swimwear company. I'm an inspirational speaker and mentor, and I put on women's kite camps and wing camps and retreats. And I first came across water sports. I've always wanted to be a surfer girl. I grew up in Northern California in a really rural area. Not a lot of access to water, but we did wakeboard growing up. I also grew up snowboarding, have always been into board sports, and have always been really athletic and competitive. I have three brothers, and we were always playing two on two everything and just, beating each other up. It was really about beating the boys, not just keeping up with the boys.
Yep.
And so I moved to San Diego for college. Once again, I wanted to be a surfer girl. I wanted to be in the water. And I surfed a little bit in college, but didn't really got distracted by other things. Didn't really put in the time necessary. Surfing, I still say, is the hardest sport.
Yep.
But learned to kite while I was in college and on a total whim. And it has completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Hmm.
But fell in love with the sport, moved to North Carolina, started teaching kiting, started my swimmer company, became a pro kiteboarder, and then a decade later, winging is introduced, and here we are. Always learning something new.
Pretty much, and always finding new ways to kind of fall and flip and whatever. But let's unpack that a little bit for when you kind of college, moved to North Carolina.
There was a job offer on the table from Real Water Sports in North Carolina. They were looking for kite coaches. I honestly think that they were talking more to my brothers than to me.
Okay.
We were on a trip with them in the BVI's that they used to put on, amazing catamaran kite trip. I was barely staying upwind at that time, and they were like, "Yeah, we're looking for coaches for the summer. Coaches tryouts are in March. Do you guys want to come out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sign me up for that." So I actually drug my older brother along and was like, let's do it. He was at UC Santa Barbara. I was at UC San Diego. I was like, this sounds like an awesome summer job. Let's go for it. And so we went to coaches training. They already knew who we were. But we did the coaches training pass. And then in June,
Okay.
I moved out to North Carolina with my older brother and spent the summer coaching. And it was, complete dive into kiting because that's all we
Hmm.
did. We were on the water all day, every day, whether that was teaching people or kiting ourselves. The climate out there is all about riding, and it was this hotbed for park riding at that time, and that meant that I started soon thereafter hitting rails, and
Okay.
a couple years later competing in rail riding and kiting. And so it was a full like head over heels kind of, oh my gosh, this sport's amazing. But
Hmm.
it wasn't a straight path to, yeah, I want to be a pro kiteboarder. It was more, this is an awesome lifestyle. I love being outside. I love this community and I'm gonna coach. Why would I not do that?
Okay. What were you taking in college at the time or before you moved out?
Communications. I got my degree in
Okay.
communications, and
Okay.
I honestly went to the wrong college. When I first, and this is a whole roundabout thing here, Luke, but I
Yeah.
do not believe that anybody should have to know what they want to do right after high school. We put college on the table for a lot of people, but you have to explore who you are and what lights you up. Because when I
Mm.
graduated college, or excuse me, when I graduated high school and applied to college, on my application, I was like, what do what major do you want to declare? I put aeronautical engineering.
Whoa.
What? No. And then I got to college, gained a little bit of experience and was like, no, actually, I'm way more social. I'm actually not into math as much as I thought. This does not align. And so turns out I kind of went to the wrong school because the UC San Diego is very science heavy and they
Okay.
have great aeronautical engineering program, but it was not honestly totally in line with what I was meant to do.
Well, no, I think kind of like I come from a heavy rehab background. I was in a near fatal motorcycle accident in 2009. And then to rehab from something that intense and that severe, what I kind of looked at is you have an A point and you have a B point. And you kind of sometimes you aim yourself towards that B point. And then if you can solidify that B point, sometimes life will take you on this kind of fairly cool journey to get you towards there. So I guess just going there for you, moving there to North Carolina, and then putting yourself in that environment. Because what we're interested in, I think a lot of people who are interested in who are taking on these sports is like, a how did people get there? Like,
Mm.
yes, they're skilled athletes. Yes, they were able to do certain things that other people might not have that skill level for. But did you put yourself in that environment? Like, what came into your life that was like, hey, I'm going to kind of shift here and I'm going to go towards this kind of thing. So for yourself, you're saying that moved there, started teaching, and then those opportunities kind of opened up for you.
And I like what you said there, which is you put yourself in that environment. And I think
Mm,
that is the takeaway from not knowing what to do in college is you just have to try things. And to try things, you need to put yourself in different environments. And that's why travel is so great and learning something new is so great. And that's why we get so addicted to something like winging that is this new challenge because it pushes ourselves out of our comfort zones, but it's putting our person in that environment that enables that possibility to even happen because we don't even know what's possible until we see it and experience it, right? I'd never seen
hmm
kiting before I learned. I was like, what is this sport we're doing? And then it completely changes my entire life. And so I love that. Just putting yourself into the experience, pulling on the thread of, oh, am I interested in this at all? Let me dive right in and see what it uncovers for me. That way I can learn about myself, what I like, and who knows where it's going to take you.
hmm No, that's what I found that a lot of our guests have talked about. Like there's one of our pro riders from Brazil. He said he didn't have the money to buy a surfboard right away, but life found a way that he ended up working in a surfboard factory, got a surfboard from there, worked up from there. So I was kind of curious as well to see what your perspective was on that. Now, getting yourself your first sponsors, anything, can we talk a little bit maybe about that? Like, was that something that came naturally? Was that something that you had to work towards?
Hmm.
How was that process?
Yeah, no, I haven't been asked that question in a long time. So great
Okay.
question. I have to think about it. It's interesting because I didn't, I said this before, I didn't actually set out to be a pro kiteboarder. I
hmm
always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so
Okay.
when I first got sponsored, it was, of course, it was hard work. I don't want to detract from my own personal motivation and hard work, but it was also being in the right place at the right time and seeing an opportunity and kind of having to push myself into doing it because I had met my now husband Brandon Scheid out there in North Carolina. We had been dating. We were traveling around the world chasing kiting.
Okay.
I was continuing on this path of, oh, this is fun. Okay, yeah, let's keep doing it. I'm diving right in. He was a sponsored rider at that time. He was competing at that time. I was like, man, I don't want anything to do with that. I didn't feel good enough. I had just learned to kite a few years prior, and I didn't feel like I was like, there's no way I can compete in this.
hmm
I'm not good enough. And so it took me a while to have the personal confidence to say, okay, I can put myself out there. It took people around me saying, hey, you should do this, to put
Okay.
myself out there, because I was one of the few women that was actually hitting sliders at that time, park riding and kiting,
Yep.
that they were like, you got to compete. You're one of a few people that are actually doing this. We need you representing for the women. And I was like, no, 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 no. I'm just doing this for fun. No, no, no. I don't want to do this. But then, once I didn't get sponsored until after my first competition, I'm pretty sure, and it was Triple S in 2012 was my first kite competition. And I got in through a wild card video. We had spent the previous winter in Brazil kind of learning how to do railing to blinds and back to blinds and front to blinds. So you first kind of basic tricks,
Yep.
and had progressed enough that I was like, okay, well, I feel okay that I can put myself out there. Meanwhile, everyone's telling me, do it, do it, do it. And I'm still kind of like, no, I'm trying to start a swimwear company. I don't, what? I'm not trying to be a pro kiteboarder.
Yeah.
And then got in on a wild card in Triple S, competed, and after that, I said, okay, well, there's an opportunity to compete. I can't remember what place I got. I think I did well. I honestly have no idea. I can't remember. But said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need support. I want support. And
Okay.
it was kind of a dichotomy of both wanting to put myself out there, but still not believing in myself enough to kind of ask for what I needed. And so I approached the company Liquid Force that Brandon was sponsored by and said, "Hey, I want to compete. What can you do for me?" I actually said, "This is actually what happened, Luke." I said, "I'll do your social media in exchange for gear," because I didn't
Okay.
feel good enough
Yeah.
to, ask for what I actually needed and perhaps what I was worth. And so I actually started working with Liquid Force doing their social media in exchange
Hmm.
for gear. And so it
Okay.
was a slow evolution of, oh yeah, asking for a little bit more, asking for a little more sport, a little more sport, a little more support, and meanwhile still competing and building up my name both in the swimwear world and in the competition world. That was a
Fair
long
enough.
story.
No, no, I appreciate the kind of in-depth kind of look at it because obviously just getting into pro, like you still had to have a regular job, like you're still making money elsewhere, obviously. And kind of because if you're just getting gear, you still have to pay for your trips and pay for everything around to compete, correct?
Oh yeah. And I
Okay.
waitressed for a long time.
Okay.
The first 4 years I coached kiting for the first 4 years of after I graduated college, and then was starting my swimwear business on the side, which really was not making any money, and was waitressing as well. And then when we moved to Hood River, actually in 2012, so right after my first competition, I waitressed for another 6 years after that.
Hmm.
And so it was really and even when I started getting paid as a kiter, I still needed to, and I still wanted to make more money because,
Hmm.
I was getting paid peanuts, and I'm like, I need to, I need to fund this, and I want to feel confident in the amount of money I'm making. I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. I'm going to
Hmm.
hustle. I was embarrassed about that for a long time, to be honest, because
Hmm.
I was like, I feel like I should be making more money as both a professional athlete and as someone that owns their own business. And I feel like I shouldn't have to um, have a side hustle in order to make my dreams work. But the reality was, I was choosing to do that. And I was choosing to make enough money to fund what both of my dreams. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having what Marie Forleo calls a bridge job, a way
Hmm.
to actually make your dreams happen. And I'm proud of myself for working hard doing that. But yeah, I hustled for a long time.
Yeah. No, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, like I'm an entrepreneur, Tom is in his own right as well. And we have this goal and this dream of what we'd like to do, but to get there, you're doing kind of whatever it is that comes in front of you to help you kind of achieve that. Like, how did you even enter into the swim world space? Was that something you knew? Was that something that came on? Like, how did you kind of find that?
I had no idea. It's really funny looking back because one of my superpowers is starting things. I'm really
Yep.
good at having a vision and igniting it into the world. And that's an acknowledgement of little me. I was 23 years old when I first launched Sensi Swim, and I did not know anything, but it was that naivete that allowed me to even put myself out there because I didn't know what I didn't know. And the only way to get started is that one step at a time. And so I was
Hmm.
like, all right, I want to do this thing. It was because I was in the water every single day and in a swimsuit every single day. And I
Okay.
knew that I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that I wanted to own my own business. And I had this idea. I said, okay, I want something that actually stays put. I'm really tired of the swimwear. There really was nothing on the market at that time that was geared towards active women, that wasn't
Hmm.
Speedo, that wasn't Patagonia, that was something that was more fashion forward and that made me feel empowered. All of the marketing of the swimwear at that time was girl laying on the beach. We've come a long way
Hmm.
since then. We're still not the full way, but it was all just sexism and not showing women actually doing anything. And so not only did I want a product that worked, but I wanted something that really showed women doing things and something that I
Yep.
actually could identify with. So I took this idea and I totally ran with it. And I said, okay, other women feel the same way and I'm going to do it. And I remember as soon as I voiced those words, because once again, I wasn't trying to be a pro kiteboarder in the beginning. I was like, I'm starting a company. But
Hmm.
as soon as I said, I'm going to do it, I was like, oh crap, now I have to do it. And I remember telling people about it and being like, all right, well, now I got to make it happen. I just told people I was going to do this thing. And actually, I remember a few years into the business, one of my friends, Julian Fillion, former kite designer at Liquiforce, now works for Ride Engine. He was like, wow, Sensi, you said you were going to do it and you actually did it. And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's just that's my superpower. My superpower is
Cool.
being able to say, let me imagine this thing. And if I say I'm going to do something, typically I do it. And yeah, it was really seeing a need and taking it one step at a time.
It's very nice to see athletes take charge, solve some problems, and then do that with like a woman focused company. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's been a journey.
No, absolutely. So you started your company, it's starting to grow. Did you know anything about, sorry, like how did you learn about all the different aspects of entrepreneurism? Because there's sourcing your product, building a team, like design, there's social, there's all that aspect of stuff. Like I've been following your channel for a while just to see how did you build that? How do you continue to grow? I find it fascinating. So I follow a bunch of different channels just to see how they put their true selves because I'm finding there's a big push towards authenticity on socials a little bit, especially for business owners. So curious to hear your take on all that.
Mm. I've always had the strength of input, sometimes to my detriment, not taking ownership of the decisions I need to make. But I asked a lot of questions. I read a ton. I'm a voracious reader. And so I dove into books. But I think more importantly, I asked people that had done it and I reached out to my network. And I had a few mentors in the beginning that had started their own companies, two women, female founders, and they gave me their insights, helped me write my first business plan. One woman, Terry Peck, she gave me her fashion books because she had a shoe company. So she said, here you go. Here are all of my like from fashion school books.
Okay.
And so I really was open to questions and asking questions and really just saying, okay, I know I don't know anything. But there was that whole little part of me that really didn't believe in myself that we talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
I just tried to get as much information as I could from those people around me and those people that I saw doing what I wanted to do. And so I completely dove into research and I continue to do that to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. Finding out now, do you look at competitors as well and kind of R&D through kind of that whole approach? Obviously, as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to, but how are you coming up with your unique new ideas? You're always coming up with beautiful new designs, new materials, kind of pushing that. Same as winging is pushing different materials. How you have your like a little department that helps you do that, or are you kind of spearheading that?
Yeah, I actually have a partner that has taken over the design. She's a wealth of knowledge and design background, did 20 years at Nike. And so she has come in to do the product development more so. I mean, I come up with the ideas. It's all based on what I need and what I see other
Yeah.
women need. And really our focus is on not just making more product, but what is the purpose of this product? Because there's so much swimwear, there's so many products out there. We're really not wanting to just promote buy this thing, buy this thing. It's more the mission of the brand and more creating this collective of women and this sisterhood that is impactful and that's sharing stories. So we first look at, okay, what do we actually need? And can this serve a variety of purposes? Can this be more
Okay.
versatile? And what's the why behind making the product? So not just
Hmm.
pushing new product, but it's certainly a balance because we're a brand that we need people to buy product from. And so that's been honestly in personally my biggest journey around, well, I don't even buy a lot of stuff. How can I ask our customers to buy a lot of stuff? And so it's coming up with how can we do this the right way? How can we be a leader for other brands to follow? I've looked a lot to Patagonia and Yvon Chouinard
Hmm.
and his
Hmm.
journey and how much impact in consumer awareness and consumer behavior he's been able to have. And so we model as much of that as possible. But also, I think it's important to find out and figure out the core of why you want to do something and work backwards from there because it's really easy to get distracted by what other people are doing. And I think it's important to look to the market, but also why am I in business? What is the message I want to promote? And how do I stay motivated to keep doing that? That is more important.
Totally. So in short, what is that for Sensi Swim?
Mm, that's empowering women in water sports and sharing other women's stories to expand the idea of what's possible for women and create more equity and equality in water sports. We still have not
Totally.
as much media representation, not as much pay, still not equal prize money, and still a lot of disparity between female and male athlete representation. And so for me, it's
Totally.
about building a platform that can share the stories of other female athletes and create and spread the confidence that I believe is required to go out into the world and share the unique, amazing, awesome humanness that each of us has.
Totally. Totally. And I think it's always, every time you look at if you look at the professional windsurfing tour or anything like that, you look at the women that are at a really, really high level, and you just see that the support they're getting is so much less than the men that are, at an equivalent high level for their category. And it was really obvious when Amandine was kind of pushing a little bit in windsurfing, competitive windsurfing, and you could really see how, women like Sarah Hauser and all the other, big names that she was sailing with, they just get so much less support than men that are, comparatively not as good. And
Yeah,
so,
it's really sorry, cut you off, Tom.
no,
It's
no,
really
go ahead, go ahead.
crazy. And it's always, it always comes down to a numbers argument that we hear that, oh, there's not as many women competing. And certainly in a lot of spheres, there are way fewer women, but I believe that it needs to be a reverse approach, meaning the women, we can't get the women unless they see that they're going to be supported. It takes a lot of money
Mhm.
to compete on any sort of tour. You have to
Totally.
travel around all the time. It's like quite a sacrifice, both monetarily and in the time required to make an impact on your sport. And so I think we need to have a bottom up approach, meaning we're not going to see the numbers until we say, oh, yeah, I'm going to support this woman just as much as I support this guy, whether or not they're 20 men in the field versus 4 women or what have you. So I think that's always the excuse we see. There's not as many numbers of women, but I think that we won't see the numbers until we put some money behind some of these athletes.
Totally. I mean, it's kind of the internal circle, right? If there's less support for women, then of course there's going to be less women. And then if there's less women, well, now there's less support for women. So if you don't
Mhm.
break that cycle, it's not going to break itself. Absolutely. And I think that you're right that equality is not really what we're looking for. It's more equity that should be given, because if you're looking at just equality, it doesn't really make sense in this case, because how many families are pushing their young girls to go out and do adventure sports, more and more these days, absolutely, but
Mm.
not nearly as much as young men, unfortunately. So I think it's so important to have women that are doing exactly what you're doing, that are pro athletes and are kind of leaders in their market, in their not market, but in industry. Kind of giving examples, as you said, if you don't see somebody doing somebody that looks like you doing what you'd like to do, it's a lot harder to do it. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah. And then especially with the number of women that we're seeing in winging, there are way more women that are actually buying the gear. And so I put on women's kite camps and retreats and wing camps and retreats. And these women have money, they're buying product. And when they don't see women represented on brands, they don't want to support that brand. They
Totally.
want to put their money where there's going to be impact. And so I think there's a real opportunity for brands to show more support to women and get those customers. And that doesn't mean just making, the whole shrink it and pink it thing, but it means actually saying what what are the products? Do we need women specific wing products? What are those products? And how can we take feedback from the market and really either just in the marketing show more women, like in general, but have more feedback from women into the products.
Totally. I think that's a really central issue. And, I sold gear in a number of different outdoor domains for quite a while. And it always comes back to the same thing. When you have a lady that's performing at a high level, there's just no gear that's made for her. And it's just, whether it's, kayaking or skiing or whatever it is, winging, it's just, there's no female specific gear. And in some cases you need it. In some cases, fair enough, you don't. But if there was more women developing gear, more women implicated in the design process, we'd see more women, specific gear. And I think that's why it's so important that you're designing gear for women, because we need more women designing gear for women.
Yeah. And I will say my husband is the lead tester at Slingshot. And so they do ask for my feedback, and I am testing gear for Slingshot. Nice. But it's and Ride Engine as well. But it's interesting because to be honest, I am not a passionate gear tester. I like to ride, and I can say, yes, this is good. Yes, this is not good. My skill set is not, this is what you need to tweak to make this completely better for women. So it's interesting because I'm like, I want to ride the new gear and I'll tell you if I like it or not, but I don't want to be involved in the product testing to a certain extent. Like, I don't want to spend it takes hours to really understand how a product is working and to really get the nuances of what makes a product great or not. And that is not my strength. So it's been funny because I like to give my feedback and they ask for it. And at the same time, I'm like, nah, I just want to go ride and have fun. I don't want to ride a product because it sucks.
No, that's
totally
true.
I mean, that's totally understandable. Everybody's got their strengths, right? And what talks to them. You definitely need to nerd out quite a bit on the gear to get to the point where you can giving out.
Can we just talk about foils for 1 minute? Holy Toledo. I give these, little kind of intro to foil talks for our camps because you need to know what's going on. And there are so many foils on the market that even I have a hard time diving into the nuances of. I have to study. I'm like, okay, and let me see what's new. What do we got going on? There are so many. You can tech out forever.
Yeah, we have Luke and I are on this chat that basically is dedicated to just geeking out on gear, and it's just, it never ends. There's always something new. There's always something people are talking about. It's nuts.
Have you heard about people shaving down the logos off of their masks?
To go faster?
Yeah, to go faster.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I don't know if it actually works because I was just with a boat captain and he is a glider pilot plane pilot, which works exactly like a foil does. And he was like, yeah, that doesn't work at all. That's not going to help. And I was like, oh, people are doing it.
That's interesting. What was his reasoning for that? Do you know?
He didn't think that it was big enough to make a difference, like thick enough. He said if there
Hmm.
was a part that was peeling off, but the logo was so thin that he said that would not make a difference at all.
That's interesting because I've definitely I think it depends on the foil. Like if you're on a
Mm.
really high aspect, really fast foil, because they're so thin, their sections are so thin, I think it actually does make a difference. I know that on, most beginner and intermediate winging foils and more surfy kind of foils, they're so thick that, even if you have a big scratch on the bottom, it doesn't really matter. But like the
Hmm.
kite foil racers, I know they just go nuts.
Mm.
Like you can't touch anything. They don't want you touching their foils with sunscreen. It's like a whole
Yeah.
sort of voodoo going on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be, yeah, that's like I guess the top elite kind of percentile. But for the most part, as people getting into the sport, it takes you such a long time just to be able to A, figure it out, B, see, how do I get this to do this? How do I get this to do that? And then to take it to that even testing level, as you're saying, like that takes quite a bit of commitment, quite a bit of figuring out. So I don't know. For our average market, if we have like 20% of our listeners are women, it's nice to know because I have one female friend who's a very good kiter, was thinking about starting teaching, thinking about doing lessons and stuff. And for her, she loves riding with us because she has a hard time finding women her
Mm.
caliber, trying to get out there and then try to do it in a safe environment, enjoyable environment. So talking about all this stuff is great. I
Mm.
do really appreciate a lot of that. And kind of where I was curious about going was how did then you take all of this kind of knowledge that you have in the company building and then take that into your public speaking?
Mm.
How did you see? Because in public speaking, I see it almost as I've done a few things and now I'd like to help kind of spread that message a little bit, kind of help grow that a bit.
Mm. That is definitely part of the impetus for starting to speak. The other, well, so one component was coming to this realization of I hadn't felt proud of myself in the decade of competing as a pro kiteboarder and starting this swim brand until honestly 2019. I had I'll tell you the story. I was at it was at the end of 2019, and because we're going into 2020 and it's a decade, new decade, I'm in all these, accountability groups and coaching programs. And I one of my coaches had suggested doing a decade in review where you look back at everything you'd accomplished in the past 10 years. And so I pulled out all my notes, all my social media, went through everything and wrote down everything I had done, everywhere I had traveled, everything that I was proud of, all my wins, all these things. And then I remember I was in this group of a couple other women and we were doing this deep dive into the past 10 years. It was like a year in review thing, but for a decade. And I had all of the papers spread out in front of me, and the leader of the group was asking some poignant questions. And I just remember feeling this complete bubbling up of almost like overwhelm, but a little bit of like anxiety, and just burst out crying and felt this stab
Mm-hmm.
in my heart and had to excuse myself and go out and bawl for 20 minutes because I realized that I was proud of myself for the first time and that I had never let myself feel that way. And I had
Mm-hmm.
done all of this stuff and was looking at the past decade and was like, wow, I'm actually really proud of who I am and the woman I've become and all of these things I've done. And it was overwhelming and anxiety inducing because I felt so bad for poor little me that had not let herself feel proud of herself. And she was working so hard to prove to whomever that she was worthy of whatever. And I was the only one that could give that to myself. I was the only one that could feel
Mm-hmm.
proud of who I was. And still to this day, you're the only one that can feel proud of yourself. And so that was kind of the capstone of this decade of uncovering and learning about myself and growth and learning. And I was like, I want to the service piece, share this with other people. I really believe that when we don't feel worthy in who we are and what we're doing, we hold ourselves back in so many ways. And that it's only when we can learn to love ourselves that we can actually have impact on the world. Because when you
Hmm.
feel good about yourself, you really go out and spread awesomeness, right? You can shine your light. And each one of us is so unique. You know, I get up on my soapbox because I'm like, let's go. You know, I get so excited about this. That is, you know, that's kind of the origin story of I was like, wow, okay, well, I've learned a lot. And it was the
Hmm.
culmination of a decade of uncovering and of course business learnings and knowing that I wanted to share this. And then the other component, to be honest, was COVID. In COVID, I
Yeah.
was like, is anyone going to buy swimsuits? You know, at the beginning, I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? I better start another business. And so I said, I have all this knowledge that I want to share and teach. What does that look like? I want to start teaching in that way. I've always loved teaching, but I
Hmm.
want to start mentoring other people on business and confidence. And so I launched my mentoring business, which involved speaking. And so the third business that I run is inspirational speaking and confidence mentoring. And I love it. I love it.
Okay. And then so
Nice.
There's a lot
that's a
there.
nice, no, it's nice. That's an awesome story of how you were able to kind of have that moment that allowed that kind of spark to open up and then to realize, because those are times I think, and it's kind of like an impetus is, do I look at this or do I let this go? And then if I look at it and I spend some time in that moment, like where is that going to take me? And we never know. But
Mm,
it's nice to see that, because sometimes an entrepreneur, and even for myself, like I'm not sure whether the grind and the drive and that stuff is pushing you forward, because you just have to, because there has to be something that keeps that. That's why we talked about our why before. And especially for anybody getting into any sport, like what is that why? Because when times get hard, that why will help kind of keep that little pilot light kind of going. So no, thanks a lot for sharing that. I was super curious as to how that kind of came to be.
yeah, I love what you said there, which is things are going to get hard and our why will keep us going because there's a great Tom Bilyeu quote that goes, the struggle is guaranteed, success is not. And
Mm-hmm.
when you can grasp that and say, okay, yep, this is going to be hard. Like being a human is hard. You know, we haven't even got, I've gone through, everyone's gone through trauma. No one's trauma is harder than any others. I've gone through a lot of trauma in my life and I know how hard being a human is. And so
Mm-hmm.
I want to we know entrepreneurship is really hard. And so how can we just say, okay, yeah, this is going to be hard, but what can I learn from this? What growth am I going to experience from this? What uncovering is going to happen? And then how can that then influence me moving forward? And that goes back to why am I doing this in the first place? Because if it gets too
Mm-hmm.
hard and you don't have a strong why, you're going to quit.
Oh yeah, you'll quit, something will happen, you'll get, because I was even talking to a friend the other day, it's like sometimes we just get stuck in certain things. It'll be a tiny little thing, but it can consume 2, 3, 4 years of your life. And in that time period, you could have been doing X, Y, Z and pushing this forward. So I'm
Mhm.
always kind of curious of having those deep kind of introspective talks sometimes, because I think we have to go below that surface level if we are, as entrepreneurs, ever going to help our project, our passion grow, because it's so much more than just the final aspect of things. It's everything
Mm.
from just getting up, which I think is pretty cool. But what I was curious about, I was at China Creek, it was 2 years ago, teaching with Paul and Alicia at Windrider, and we watched your Hollywood debut. So if we can chat about that a bit, that was pretty cool.
Oh, that is hilarious. Yeah, I was in the movie Send It, the first, I think it's the first kiteboarding movie,
I
like
think
proper
so. I think
Hollywood
so.
kiteboarding movie. That was an experience. Yeah, that was, we filmed that in 2018, I think. And I was one lucky kiteboarder that got to be involved with this production that the founder of Wind Voyager had put money into, wanted to create this kiteboarding film. He wrote the script, and he had put money up for Triple S for the previous few years, and had approached Reel and, pitched this whole project. And I think there were, I don't know, 10 of us, 10 pro kiteboarders that got to be involved. I played myself. You see my big walking scene?
Oh yeah.
It was really interesting. It was really interesting. It was a phenomenal experience. I think we all kind of learned how long and arduous movie making actually is. It takes a long time. We were on set for a long time every single day, but it was crazy. I'm proud of being in that movie. I don't think it had as much reach as the producer and director and everyone wanted it to have. I think a lot of things could have been improved on, but wow, the fact that someone actually wanted to do that in kiteboarding, I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Yeah, we I think, well, because all of us instructors kind of sat up top and had some beers and watched that, and it was the first time we had seen something, and then we got to watch some of our favorite athletes up on there. So I don't know, it was a pretty cool experience to watch. And then the next day we power up our jet skis, and we're like,
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, every once in a while someone mentions it to me, and I'm just like, oh, it's so funny.
oh yeah.
Pretty cool experience. I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt. We ask everybody this, but like, how was your first foil kind of ride with bucking Bronco? Did you like what? Did you ever like? Yeah, what did that feel like?
I remember it being super hard. We like to say if you're not cursing at the wing, you're not winging in the beginning. When you're learning
Yeah.
to wing, if you're not cursing at the wing, you're not winging. Because the first time I tried it was when it debuted at AWSI here in Hood River. I think that was 4 years ago now, 4 summers ago, when it was like, oh, winging, okay, it's here. And
Yeah,
with being
2019.
2019.
I think so.
Okay, yeah. And that AWSI was like, well, I better try this thing. First thought was, wow, this is so stupid. Second thought was, oh, this is really hard. Still thought it was stupid. And did 3 unintentional downwinders when I couldn't get up on foil at all. And I foil a lot on the kite, right? That's why, I kind of think winging is harder than we first thought it was. But yeah, I just remember completely bucking Bronco, just being like, what are we doing? This is so stupid. And being really difficult. So if you're out there learning, it is hard. Take your time, take breaks. I think that's a cool thing about winging. You can get off the board and take breaks, and keep going. You're going to get it. You will get it, but it is difficult.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest experiences, Tom and I sail in the Great Lakes, so Lake Ontario, and I was in 4 or 5 foot swell or something in the center, sat there, put the wing down, and then straddle your board like a surfer. I always wanted to be a surfer, but surfing is a lot of work. And it's like 5 seconds of surf, and now you can surf for minutes. And it was just, I don't know, it hit me because it had been like so many years of practice, right, for all of us to get even to the point of being able to ride like this. And then you're sitting there in this stuff, and it's just, I find winging allows us to kind of sightsee. It brings in that kind of almost meditative space it can be into this sport, because kiting, windsurfing, like when you windsurf, you're blasting, you're feeling absolutely every single bump. You're going off these little kickers. But for winging, it can be that, but it can be this completely other aspect of things where you can use it on a sup. You can sit out there in the swell. You can just surf. Like, it's crazy how much that sport kind of opened up all these different aspects. And for me, helped me enjoy and to kind of respect all the stuff that we had done just to even get there.
Yeah, I love that. And also the access, the
Yes.
new places that you can go, because you don't have to have a huge beach to run your lines or a ton of space to launch. And you don't even have to have as clean a wind. I don't know if you feel this same way. I'm sure you do,
Oh,
but
totally, yeah.
right? The gusts don't matter nearly as much on the wing.
No,
The
and especially the lulls don't matter as much. Like for coming out of when you're kiting, you feel the lulls maybe a little bit less because you can kind of fly the kite a little harder. But windsurfing, if you have a big lull, you're just dead. Like there's nothing you can do. You just stop.
Hmm.
And then the second you introduce the foil into the equation, it's so much easier to keep going. But I find that with winging, because you have the wing in your hands and you can pump it, and because the material is so light and just fills with so little air, even if there's basically no wing, you can still keep going, you can still keep pumping. Whereas kite foiling or wind foiling, I don't feel like you can do that quite as well.
Yeah, you don't get jerked around nearly as much on the wing. You know, sometimes here in Hood River, it's gusty and super up and down. And I just remember having a few sessions out on the water. You're just like, I have to go in. I'm just getting, yanked. And then with the wing, it's world-class winging here.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Can we, for those who haven't, like for those at home who are brand new to wind sports, can we talk about your kind of your home site now? Because it is world class.
Oh, yeah. Hood River, if you haven't heard of it, is in Oregon. It's on the Columbia River Gorge, and it's right on the Columbia River, which is part of the Columbia River Gorge, this massive gorge that runs through Washington and Oregon, divides the two states. It's a massive river, so we're kiting and winging on this massive river. The interesting thing is that the swell is on the water, the wind is going one direction, but the current is actually going the other direction. So in the springtime, last spring, we had a ton of current in the river. And so you were kind of doing up, if you would stop and sit down in the water, you'd be going upriver or downriver, excuse me. So we have a number of different obstacles that make kiting and winging here a little bit more advanced. We have barges that come through. We have a lot of river current. It's really crowded in the summer. But that being said, we have wind almost every single day. And if you're able to time it right and watch the graph, you can get really good conditions. And it's my favorite place. I wake up every day and say, I love where I live. I'm so grateful.
It's a cool spot. And I mean, there's so many people there riding, and there's a few that just have the weather so dialed. Like, if you know who to listen to, you're always at the right spot, always at the right time. And it just goes off every day, every day, every day. It's crazy.
I'm lucky in that that person is my husband. Like he is, he's checking out 10 apps. And
Awesome.
so he's our he makes our schedule. So I'm just like, tell me where to go.
You just
I
say
will be there.
schedule. That's awesome.
We each have our strengths, right?
Yeah. No,
Ain't nobody got
absolutely.
time to triangulate the forecast. But he does it,
Yeah.
so it's awesome.
Absolutely. And you got obviously nice swell. Like, what's the variety in swell size that you can get based on current or based on both actually factors, current and wind, obviously? But
Yeah, so once a couple of days of wind come through, and we have some big days in a row, the swell will build up even more. And so we have, I mean, it can get huge, rolling at the biggest, like car size river swell that comes through. Obviously, it's not breaking waves, but for winging, it's
mhm,
perfect. And there's a number of
Totally.
different locations that we have where the swell, there's a spot called the Hatchery, there's a spot called Doug's, Arlington, Maryhill, where the swell can really ramp up. And on the big, big windy days, you'll see a lot of people chasing it to those locations and just doing endless laps. So it's like our own private little wave pool. And I love that they're not breaking waves, because then you're not even dealing with
mhm.
getting out through the whitewater.
Yeah, just stay away
Yeah,
from the boats and then you're fine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the
yeah,
other people
totally.
now, with
Yeah.
windsurfers and kiters and all of the watercrafts, we also have downwind sup paddlers and kayakers. There's lots of watercraft in the river you have to watch out for. So I'm anticipating to be more and more of an issue as the years go on.
Hmm.
Yeah, especially with winging. I know when we were just starting to wing back home on like Ontario, we noticed really fast that the just kind of like the train, that you get on a wave, you pop back out, get on a wave, pop back out. The train that we would do winging was completely different than windsurfing and completely different than kiting. And if you weren't, if you didn't come from kiting or windsurfing or both, then you didn't know how to avoid the kiters and windsurfers around you. And a lot of the wings out there today don't have windows. So you can't
Hmm.
really see what's going on around you. So how do you deal with that in Hood River? Because it is really crowded.
Yeah, I just recommend people keep their head on a swivel. And don't
Okay.
go when there are clear spots where a lot of windsurfers are hanging out. I just try and avoid those areas, to be honest. I didn't windsurf ever. And so one of the most terrifying sounds in the world to me is when you the slide giant windsurfer behind you. You're like, because they come in really fast
Oh yeah.
and they will take you out. And so I always just think, obviously, always look before you turn, be mindful of the riding circles, be courteous of other people, be nice. I think that's, the the
Hmm.
golden rule. Don't treat others as you wouldn't treat, what's the golden rule? Treat others as you want to be treated. That's it.
Totally.
Yeah, but really definitely looking. I
So
see a
you're
lot of
spot
people
checking
don't
a
look before
ton.
they turn. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
spot checking, bringing your wing up over kind of thing,
Yeah.
looking, bringing it back down.
And I don't know how you
Okay.
guys feel about windows. I honestly do not think they're helpful. I never
Hmm.
can see through them
Well,
very
that
well.
it's
And so, yeah,
always,
I think just
yeah.
looking, pulling the wing up is way easier to me. Interested to
I
hear your
have
thoughts.
I have mixed feelings on them. I feel like I was riding windowed wings for a while and thought that they were completely useless, and now I'm riding wings without windows, and I feel like I miss them. And
Hmm.
it's
Interesting.
yeah, especially now that I'm riding in a lot of spots where there's boat traffic, and they
Mm,
just have no
Hmm.
idea what you're doing. Like even less so than other wind sport users. They just motorboats just zooming by, and I would be really happy to be able to cruise along and look downwind and just get a little bit more vision. But at
mm,
the same time, it's a problem, right? Because when you're folding your wings, they crack, and if you want to ride
Hmm.
in the snow or on ice, then it's an issue. It's definitely a problem. We need to find a better window material, I think.
mm.
Yeah,
I'll tell the R&D department.
yeah, better window material. Go.
See what they come out with. Because obviously windsurfing, like the whole thing is fairly clear. You can see through. Kite's not getting in the way. But in this
Yep.
instance, yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I just get used to spot checking a ton, bringing my wing up all the time. And I teach clients that the same thing, like bring your wing down, bring it up, check, bring it up,
Mhm,
check. Just get used to that. Obviously, you're checking as you're turning around, but because you can get locked and loaded and look very similar to windsurfing, kind of blast along, and then but
mhm.
you don't know what's going on. So I'm curious to see what they come up with, if whether or not it's canopy that's a bit more translucent. I'm not sure, but I guess
Yeah,
that's
that's
what's going
true
to be
with
coming down the pipe.
all
Yeah.
these like Alula style stuff and all the fibers and membrane looking fibers that are coming out. That could totally be a solution, having a wing that's just a little bit more translucent, and you can't see super well through it maybe, but at least you can see shapes and you can see if there's somebody riding downwind of you or something like that. I think especially with a lot of wingers in the same area, because we're so silent, like you don't hear that board slapping, you don't see sprayed, it's so
Yeah.
silent, so you can really sneak up on people. And I kind of did this for fun on windsurfing friends because you can point so much higher than them. So I just kind of, buzz them from behind. But it would always freak them out because you just don't know somebody's coming. You're not used
Yeah.
to it.
We'll have to contact the your Sensi swimwear design department, and we can talk about how we can get this implemented.
Yeah,
Maybe everyone just needs to be wearing hot pink bikinis and then we can see
that would
people
help.
better.
But if we don't have windows to see the hot pink bikinis through, then we still won't see them.
I don't know. Yeah, I am a little bit apprehensive about having so much traffic and it's just going to increase. But how do you manage that? I mean, that's the question in surfing as well. We've seen a lot of places just get so busy and people dropping in on one another that the management of access is definitely an issue.
Yeah, I think it starts with education, right? Like it's one of the places that has the worst problem with this, I think, is Hawaii and
Mm,
Maui, because there's so many people on the water, so many different water sports constantly, and they just have a pecking order. And you're informed of it when you get there. There's signs of it on the beach, and it's made for a reason. In my mind, if I'm winging and there's somebody windsurfing and they want to get a wave, well, it's their wave because I'm going to get 10 times as many waves as they are easily.
mm,
And I'm
Mhm.
and to be fair, we're not even really riding the same waves, especially if the two riders are fairly high level. But nonetheless, like I'm not gonna drop in on somebody prone surfing while I'm winging
Yeah.
because that's just
You
like
know,
obvious because I do all those sports, but for people getting into it, they just don't know.
Yeah.
So that could be kind of interesting. What do you think coming in at it from kiting? Like, what's the pecking order for you for all the sports that you see on the water at Hood River?
That's a great question. Well, I was just going to speak, and I'm not exactly sure what the answer to that is because we don't have not everyone's riding the wave as much as breaking wave would be. Everyone's trying to
Totally.
kind of get on the same thing. Yeah, I mean we have at the hatchery one of the main spots where it is an old windsurfing spot now. A ton of wingers go there. The windsurfers have a certain area that they like to be in. So I guess the pecking order for that would be okay. Yeah, the windsurfers are there. They're established. They've been coming there for 50 years or whatever.
Yeah.
That's their
mhm,
spot. And the wingers can go a little bit lower. But I was gonna say, I think a lot of um, it is involved in education and actually teaching people right of way rules because
Totally.
I've had a
mhm.
lot of kite students that have no idea on right of way rules. And I really, that's one of the things we pride ourselves on with Start Kiteboarding, our kite camps and retreats, is teaching proper beach management and right of way and how to yield and how to turn around safely and just how to manage yourself when you're at a new spot or your home spot and to do so respectfully and in a way that keeps everyone safe because I'm sure you've experienced this. I mean, especially with kiting, not nearly as much with winging, but people just not even being able to get off the beach because they don't know how to launch their kite properly or
Totally.
what have you
Mhm.
just like whew, you're like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Or just
Yeah,
gear
there's
explosion everywhere and not just being once again courteous and respectful and treating others as you want to be treated.
it takes time,
Yeah.
and I think it takes time with a lot of these sports, and I think we have to respect the fact that there is that learning curve, and I like to do things a little bit maybe slower, like have people learn on land, have them take their time, have them connect. We had some other guests with a rider from Peru, and he was more of a minimalistic kind of gear approach where he had one kind of thing, like one foil, one board, one wing. And he's like, master that thing, get used to it, like become its friend, and then feel its little things. And then from there, you can kind of expand. But there is such a push, obviously, for new. But for somebody getting into this sport, like it doesn't have to be, I guess, as intense as it does. And it's a good segue to ask you, what gear did you learn on,
Ooh,
for our audience?
yes, I learned on we had a mishmash of gear because it was kind of before well, it was before we were on Slingshot, both Brandon and myself, and so we were learning on just random stuff. I can't even remember. Was it a ride engine board? It might have been a ride engine board. It was a 100 liter ride engine board, and I have no idea what the foil was. I couldn't even tell you.
Okay.
It was a borrowed foil. Everything was borrowed. We had one wing that we're
Sweet.
sharing between three of us. I think it was a prototype wing that we had gotten from, I think that Liquid Force had made because it was right it was when we were still on Liquid Force before they shut down. So at the beginning of 2020 when I learned.
Okay.
And, um, but no one really had I mean, that and still I think is the hardest thing, just having access to gear. If you don't have a
Hmm.
friend that's doing it, you don't, to be honest, I don't recommend people buy a 150-liter board.
Oh
It's
no,
way better
absolutely
to
not.
rent one, right? And just slowly progress down. But you do need to start really big and start on something that is going to give you as many advantages as possible because winging is difficult. So yeah, I think I learned on a 100 liter and then got down to a 30 liter really quickly, probably before I was
Okay.
ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
For our female riders, are we allowed to ask kind of weight,
Oh
like how
yeah.
much you weigh compared to
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
125 and
Okay.
I'm 5'5".
Okay.
I don't know,
Perfect.
125
Yeah.
pounds. I don't know what that is in kilos.
It's like 60-ish. No, less than that. 55-ish, I think.
And 165 centimeters tall.
So yeah,
So
Okay.
56,
yeah, I would say
56.8
probably for someone my
kg.
size, like a 100 liter 120 is a
Yeah.
good start. But
Okay.
Yeah,
then also,
those
I
ride
mean,
engine
actually
boards
I
are
recommend just starting
brutal.
on a sup board. Sorry, Tom. What did you say?
I was just saying those early ride engine boards seem brutal to learn on because they're so thick and like super heavily beveled. You must have had such a hard time with that thing.
Oh, I remember it was not easy at all. And then, like I said, I went downsized really quickly. And I remember the first downwinder I did, I was on a 35-liter board, ride engine board. And we did a Viento to Hood River, which is an 11-mile downwinder. So this is later that summer. My first downwinder, went with friends. There's big river swell. I did not know that you're not supposed to go straight down the wave and that you're supposed to actually go side. No, yeah, no one told me.
You
It was
fall like 5 feet.
oh, so I would just go like as fast as possible
Oh, we all
down the
did it.
wave, completely explode at the bottom of the wave,
Yep.
get back up on
Yeah.
this 35-liter board. I was so tired at the end of that downwinder, and then I was like, "What am I doing wrong? This is ridiculous." And then and I learned I was doing it wrong.
Well, we all did that. Like, I was riding in
Totally.
Victoria, BC there last summer, and now I know, like, I ride the shoulder, I kind of go at an angle, but at the start, we would just go straight, and then I
Yeah,
would like the foil would come out, and
yeah,
you're like, uh-oh, like I'm 3 feet up plus like 3 feet up. Like the whippers were way worse than anything
yeah,
else. The wipeouts were crazy. I was like, okay,
yeah.
my neck was just like foot
Oh,
strapped,
yeah.
obviously on a 30. Like you were riding foot straps on that, or were you just
No,
not?
I didn't have foot straps on. No, did
Whoa.
I?
Okay.
I can't remember, Luke. I don't think I
Okay.
did
No, fair enough.
because I wasn't jumping at that time.
Okay.
So it was, I mean,
So
I
was
made
that
it
just
way
a
harder
kite
on
foil you
myself.
were riding?
Sorry.
Was that just the kite foil board that you were riding kiting?
No, it was a ride engine prototype wing board. Like they got
Oh, cool.
into some prototypes pretty early,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, why would I not be on the smallest one? And but that's really before I kind of had known. And now I have a 32-liter flying fish that I love, but I also have a 50-liter wingcraft that when it's light, I just want to be able to stand up quickly and easily. And so if
Hmm.
I haven't gone in a while or it's light, or even if the swell is really big and I'm a little nervous about conditions, like if it's super windy, I'll take the 50-liter. That way it's no problem to get up. I'm not going to get stuck. I don't see any reason why to make it harder on myself than I need to. I've spent tons of time bobbing in the water, not being able to get up that I just like to make it easy. So, um, I ride the 32-liter primarily, but I have a 50-liter as well now.
Yeah, and for people at home listening to this, take note that this is at one of the windiest spots that you can imagine, and Sensi is riding a big board there fairly often. It sounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, thankfully I have a sponsor and so I'm able to have multiple boards. We were talking about simplicity, but
Yeah.
I think the message there is you don't have to go smaller if that's, if your skill's not there. It is hard to get going winging, you pumping that thing, that's like doing a bunch of burpees. So I
Hmm.
really believe in making it as easy as possible on yourself to maximize the fun.
So if you're on, like, obviously that's a super windy spot. So your wind etiquette with regards to your gear has to be fairly dialed. So, like, if you fall in front of it and your board's light and your foil's light, like, what's your leash situation like? Because that thing I've seen boards just kind of take off and fly. So, what are your maybe tips and tricks when you're in a high kind of swell, high wind area?
Well, I definitely believe in having a leash and high swell. I've actually been
Okay.
riding without a board leash recently because you can get to your board, putting the wing in front of you and kind of holding it out, and if it goes far away from you. But if it's super swelly, definitely have a board leash. I haven't actually experienced where my board's flying a lot like that.
Okay.
I have a waist leash on my board. That's kind of my preferred method right now. And then I really like the coil, or excuse me, I don't like the coil leash. I really like the rope leash because the coils sometimes, I think they can smack you in the face when you're pumping
Yeah,
a
that
lot.
hurts.
Yeah,
I actually
Yeah.
like a
yeah,
long
totally.
enough. If it's too short, that's really annoying as well because then you can't flip over your wing. So a long
Hmm.
enough rope leash. I think the slingshot ones are really great. And then I've been playing around with having both items leashed to my waist harness. So putting the wrist leash on my waist as well. To be honest, I think the leash is one of the most annoying parts of winging. So I
Hmm.
haven't figured out my perfect formula yet that doesn't cause me any annoyance. Brandon's been going no leash, which is terrifying.
For both?
Yeah. He's been
Oh
riding with no
wow.
leash.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Whoa.
I don't
Okay.
recommend that. I did it
Yeah.
for about 15 minutes. I was like, I have to put this back on. I can't.
Yeah, I mean the only viable reason that I've heard to do that is if you're in a really big swell, like really,
Mm.
really big. And at that
Yeah,
point
right. And
you're
it's breaking waves. Then I would
totally
say
and
like
that
no leash
yeah,
either, right?
yeah, with a support boat, because otherwise you're just guaranteed to destroy the wing every single time you fall. But other than that, yeah, definitely wrist leash or waist leash, whatever, on the wing. And I have heard of people playing around without the board leash. I feel like if you ride, you just get used to it eventually, and it's just a part of life, and you deal with it.
Yeah. And it's better to be able to get back to your board easily. Once again, like how can you make this easier on yourself? And if you're swimming for your board a lot, just use a board lead. Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Excuse me. No, that's fair. Well, you did say that you had what is it, 6 o'clock cutoff. So we're 15 minutes over. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk to us about, especially for, let's say, our female audience? Is there anything that you would like to say to them if they're thinking about kind of, and this can, because our talk was not just about sport, but it was about just you following that passion, that spark, and then letting that path kind of unravel in front of you as you went. So is there anything, closing thoughts, I guess, you'd like to leave with us?
Well, when speaking about the winging, I will say that I do believe that almost anyone can wing, and that if you are able to separate the components and start on a sup board with a wing to get the wing skills, play around even in the parking lot with the wing and get the feel for it, wing skate. That's a
Mhm.
great way to get the introduction of the wing, and then learn to foil separately. I think when you're trying to
Totally.
do both together, it can be really difficult. And so if you're able to learn to foil behind a boat or a jet ski, take advantage of that and try and get the motions and um, separate the two components before bringing them together, because it can feel really difficult. But otherwise, keep going. You can totally do it. And I think that it's a great combination of challenging enough that you want to keep trying, but you get enough rewards that you're like, okay, I can still do this. So it stretches you in a really positive way. And then as far as just following your path, I think the message I want to leave is just to not be so hard on yourself and to really reward yourself for just showing up and trying. And yeah, set the goal. Totally believe in goals and aiming for something amazing, but to have a low amount of attachment to that goal and just to say what's the experience I can get from this? What's the journey? You're exactly where you need to be. And the more that you can embrace that, the more that you can actually enjoy life and share your unique gifts.
No, I like that.
Uh, yeah, I really like that too. The low attachment to the goal, I think, is a really cool concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's the
And
process, it's not the destination.
you have to, or else you end up going windsurfing in Ottawa, thinking you're better than you are, getting stuck a fish hook in your. Because I was going by and I was like, man, I am fine, blasting by, and it's like, oh crap, I'm just sliding downwind, and sure enough, this guy's fishing, and the fish hook catches me in my wetsuit. It's like complete deflate, right? It's like, okay, never mind, I haven't done this in a while. But yeah, exactly. It is putting yourself in that space of enjoying what you're doing. And then the culture I found was it's a phenomenal culture with friends and community. There's a curiosity that is there and thrives, which I find pretty exciting in that
Mm,
kind of win culture.
yeah, I agree. It's the best community.
So for people at home who are wanted to get a hold of you, attend one of your events, what's the easiest way for them to reach out to you?
Probably Instagram, Sensi Graves
Okay.
on Instagram, SensiGraves, or my website, which is sensigraveswim.com or sensigraves.com. That's my speaking and kiting website. So either of those, you can find me on all of the emails at Sensi Graves and at Sensi Graves Swim.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I want to say thanks a lot for meeting with us tonight. It was great chatting with you. And we'll probably see you in Hood River in the water eventually.
Amazing. Come out. Hit me up. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks for joining Tom and I on this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.